the challenge of exploiting the creativity of our hidden or underutilized artistic potential, but at the same time choosing subject matter that is compatible with our cultural norms and values for general acceptance.
Film producers in the persons of Ibu Wage and Sana Sise fervently defended the move.
Basically, our productions were educational. We were just out to educate people on issues that matter in those days.
Cradle of filmmaking in this country. Like he said, the film unit was a government department under the Ministry of Information at the time. It was small, but it was highly prized in the sense that they were the only ones doing what they were doing. There were no Gambian independent filmmakers or no television in the country at the time.
The interface which brought together major players in the film production business is one such effort geared towards ensuring a win-win situation for organizers and those who showcase their works in the media for public consumption. Samuel Ba, GRTS.
The GRTS Radio live on our website, which is at www.grts.gm. We're going to take a very short break now. The news continues in just a moment.
This is the month of goodness. This is the month of giving. This is the month we reflect upon our lives and spell the name of Allah to fill our souls with faith and love with every step we take, with every smile. We are a nation with a bright future that we walk towards. Hand in hand, as one. We are Africa. Ramadan Mubarak.
Welcome back. U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, who has made a brief stop in the South Sudanese capital of Juba. Clinton, who was on a 10-day tour of Africa, later made visits to Uganda and Kenya, where she inspected U.S. military stations hosting special forces and drones. We have details in this report.
U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton made a lightning visit to Juba, the capital of South Sudan, and called for an agreement between South Sudan and Sudan. Negotiations between the two countries have been dragging on for months in the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa. Sudan and South Sudan have been unable to resolve deep differences about sharing the profits of oil resources. South Sudan produces most of the oil, and Sudan is a transit route.
All of the matters, the issues that were outstanding were charges for transportation, for processing, transit, and all of that. So they've agreed on all those things.
The dispute over oil revenues has brought Sudan and South Sudan to the brink of war. Troops from South Sudan invaded Heglig, a petroleum production region on Sudan's southern border, and destroyed the infrastructure there. Hillary Clinton's tour of Africa continues with a visit to Uganda Friday, where she met with President Museveni. She also visited a military base where U.S. Special Forces equipped with drones are giving support to the Ugandan army. The army forces are combating Shabab Islamist rebels in Somalia and trying to capture the leader of the Lord's Resistance Army, Joseph Kony. The U.S. Secretary of State also visited a clinic specializing in treating AIDS. Hillary Clinton expressed her concerns.
Uganda is now the only country in sub-Saharan Africa where the rate of HIV is going up instead of going down.
Saturday morning, Hillary Clinton arrived in Nairobi in Kenya, where army troops are also deployed in Somalia. A grenade attack against Kenyan troops policing a Somali-majority neighborhood killed one person. The U.S. Secretary of State met for talks with President Mwai Kibaki and Prime Minister Raila Odinga. The talks concern the presidential election planned for March 2013 and the urgency to make sure that electoral violence that killed 1,000 people in 2007 will not be repeated.
Senegalese media outlets have changed their program content to suit the demands of the holy month of Ramadan. A string of religious programs dominate the airwaves, both on radio and television channels. People are largely satisfied with the changes, but authorities are mindful of the spread of intolerant messages. We have details in this report.
Senegal's radio and television stations changed their programming during the holy month of Ramadan. A large portion of broadcasts is devoted to religion. They feature preachers invited to speak on the air.
The preachers do indeed take center stage. They are on the air throughout the month of Ramadan, during which time the regular music programs are suspended. The preachers are featured on various programs, depending on the decision of the station management.
The change in programming appears to satisfy most Senegalese.
If it's possible to broadcast fewer music programs on radio and television, then it should be done. Music weakens one's faith in God. The more the Quran is heard on the air, the better.
When you see these religious programs on television, you feel repentant, even if you're not a devout person.
But media officials are careful to ensure that the airwaves are not used to preach intolerance. Certain guidelines are put into place.
The main lines of the discourse are defined ahead of time, but these preachers, who are broadcast professionals, are free to do their work as they see fit.
The preachers willingly play the game. It's a far cry from the notion of radical Islam.
As this is the period of Ramadan, we treat subjects relating to religious behavior. It's about how people can benefit from Ramadan, as well as what they can lose. We try to give a moral lesson. That is what we try to focus on.
Meanwhile, music programs are a rarity during this holy month, replaced by the strains of religion considered much more appropriate during this special time of the year.
The United Nations General Assembly has voted unanimously to condemn the bloodshed in Syria and the Security Council's inability to find a lasting solution to the civil war. The non-binding resolution calls for a transitional government in the country. Russia and China led opposition to the motion, saying the adoption of the resolution will only increase mayhem in Syria. For more on that, we turn to the CFI report.
133. Against 12. Abstention 31. Draft Resolution A/66/L57 is adopted.
谢谢主席先生。外部强加解决方案无助。
Sanctions will lead to nothing, but will only complicate the situation further. The Russian delegation regrets the General Assembly's decision. Behind the facade of humanitarian rhetoric, this resolution conceals a blatant support for the armed opposition. Russia and China have thrice vetoed UN Security Council resolutions, which could have led to sanctions against Syria. The Russian ambassador said the resolution contradicts efforts to implement the peace plan of Kofi Annan, who resigned on Thursday. The Syrian government attacked the main sponsors of the resolution, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and Qatar. It is a strange paradox that the states supporting this resolution are the very same states that have played a major role in militarizing the situation in Syria. Before the vote, the UN Secretary General reminded members of the rising number of reports of war crimes.
The acts of brutality that are being reported may constitute crimes against humanity or war crimes.
At best, the resolution will further isolate the Syrian government, but most believe it is merely symbolic and will have little effect on the ground.
We go with our second break now. We'll be right back.
Are you thinking of financing an investment opportunity or simply a reliable banking partner? Zenith Bank Gambia offers you just that.